You are listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I'm joined by my two friends, Amanda and Tyler. We are a trio of coaches coming together to explore life's biggest topics. Each episode, we hold true to our name, Come As You Are, by showing up and going live. Whatever we bring to the table that week is what we talk about. No scripts, no planning, just real and raw conversations. And audience participation is always encouraged. Our mission is to create a space where vulnerability and authenticity take center stage. And we believe in the power of deep conversations and soulful connections. So welcome to the show. We are happy that you're here, and we invite you now to just sit back, relax, and enjoy today's conversation.
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Happy Friday. Yay.
Best day.
Favorite time of the week.
Oh. The longest week ever.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. It felt like an eternity.
I don't know why either. We were trying to Stephanie and I were talking about that backstage. We were trying to figure out why did it feel so long this week? And I have no idea.
Because we were just the anticipation. We just wanted to come and be here.
I do. The minute we end the recording on Fridays, I'm always like, is it Friday yet? Can we do this again? Because I get so much joy out of being here. And today's already been busy for me. I got up this morning. I got to guest on another podcast this morning. So this is my second podcast for the day. I'm feeling super famous this morning.
Look at you go, Tyler. Yay. Amazing.
So fun. Yeah. I for me, I feel like it's the longest, but the time goes by so fast. And then this week kind of threw me off, because it was different than usual. I went to visit my mom and I got snowed in there. So I got I want to say stuck, but stuck at my mom's, which completely threw off the routine and just made things, different than expected. And so I feel like when those things kind of happen, it sort of slows down time and makes you realize, oh yeah, I'm so used to just waking up at my own house and getting my breakfast and doing my morning routine and doing these things. And then you wake up in somebody else's home and you're like, oh, wait a minute. This is unusual. This isn't my normal everyday routine. This is different. So that really reminded me this week that, time.
I'm walking around and I'm anticipating that I can take off my winter coat soon, and I see the trees are starting to bloom. So my question for you is, where does your mom live that you are getting snowed in end of March?
You know what? It's actually, she lives more north. So that's why. But it's pretty typical. Usually we get one last winter storm at the end of March. And then that's usually it. Or so we hope it's it.
Okay.
I work with a bunch of Canadians, and they were talking about it, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I'm in Texas, so it's warm here all year round pretty much. And they were like, yeah, we've got foot of snow on the ground. And I'm like, huh? What? It blew my mind that there was still snow happening in parts of the world in March. I was like, doesn't seem real. Does it? Yeah. I mean, Stephanie, you're in Germany. You get snow, right?
Yeah, for sure. We had a lot of snow actually this winter. Yeah, it depends, but we do also have this last drop in temperature in March, sometimes in April. And then after that, it's just spring and, happy times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really interesting this year. Very, very different. Yeah. So it was kind of interesting. But where my mom lives, it's more to be expected. because we don't like, it's just, being north. I don't know.
You know, what you said, Amanda, reminded me of something that I had a conversation on earlier today about, like, oh, you wake up somewhere else and you're not in your usual routine. And it kind of throws you off a little bit. And it reminded me of this topic of like being comfortable. And then I immediately thought of like our show here. That's like such a, like the most comfortable space to be in, right? And I had a conversation earlier this week about comfort zone. We talk about this so often in the self-development world. And I want to say that this is a very, like, this word or this term has a bad rep, because people always say like, oh, you're in your comfort zone, you need to get out of your comfort zone. And the person I had the conversation with, she said, you know what? I think this is the biggest crap on the planet. So many people. And I thought at the end, like, oh, she's onto something, because she was saying, look, so many people who are in their comfort zone, they are not comfortable. They are really unhappy. They have like past experiences they can't move on from, and they have trauma, and they have all this stuff that's going on in their lives, and all these things they're trying to accomplish or trying to get done, and they're like barely making it. You know, they're in this survival mode, and then they enter maybe a self-development program, and the first thing they hear is like, oh, you're in your comfort zone. We need to get you out of your comfort zone. You need to be, but they're like barely holding on to life, right? So that's something I wanted to like bring to the table here today, this idea of comfort zone, where the two of you are at with that, and what do you think about that? Like, honestly, this conversation super shifted this, that comfort zone is not something that's super bad, and also understanding, oh yeah, that's where this comes from, and that we all probably have a different idea of what the comfort zone actually is. What's your idea of like comfort zone? What do you associate with it? Like, first thing that pops into your head?
Well, the first thing that was coming to my head was, like, for me, the comfort zone, I've never felt that there was anything wrong with the comfort zone, as long as you are happy in your comfort zone, you know, as long as you know, like it's kind of weird, because you brought up the word trauma, and I am by no means like a trauma expert or anything like that. But, you know, oftentimes, like I would almost reframe the comfort zone to the safety zone. Because when you're in like a high trauma situation, and I just know this, I'm saying this based off of solely my own past experiences on like really traumatic moments, like you kind of go into like a safety zone, not even necessarily your comfort zone. It's just like a security safety zone that you kind of find yourself in. And so I think that if you know, if you're working through a lot of trauma, you're not even in a comfort zone yet. You're purely in like a safety zone, like security zone space, where it's pretty uncomfortable, you know, and you have to like get yourself out of that security safety zone and then into the comfort zone. Because the comfort zone to me is like awesome now. You know, the comfort zone for me is my growth zone. And, you know, oftentimes you see the chart and it's like the comfort zone, and then you've got your growth zone. Well, this is just me being like personal developee and, you know, definitely a coach by nature, but I'm learning how to make my growth zone also my comfort zone. And I think there's a lot of like times when you get into the personal development spaces and they're like, you got to break out of the comfort zone, you got to grow, you got to do all of this. That feels very triggering. It feels very scary. It feels overwhelming. But my bigger question, I guess, to add to this mix is, how can we make the growth zone our comfort zone? How do we get comfortable with growth and with change and with evolving so that it feels good? And, you know, I'm going to use the gym as like the example. I just started to work out with a personal trainer like last week. We've had 4 sessions so far. I meet twice a week with him. It's so uncomfortable. Like the gym for me right now is super uncomfortable. I'm clunky, like I can barely lift things. You know, I feel awkward at the gym right now, but I'm working on making the gym part of my comfort zone, part of my routine, part of the things that make me feel secure. And it's like, how do we blend the growth and the comfort zone to make it all like a really great comfort zone where you're continuing to grow and evolve?
Yeah, for me, where I think comfort zone comes up the most often is this, like, I almost feel like we're talking about like uh two different types of comfort zone. Like it's almost like a comfort zone where we're content with our lives and we're happy where we're at and we're like actually just comfortable and enjoying life. And then this like idea where the comfort zone, and I think this is what you were talking about too, Tyler, the like comfort zone becoming the growth zone as well, right? Because we stay stuck in this comfort zone. So we don't, do the big thing. We don't take action to move ourselves towards the bigger goals, right? To me, that's what when I first think of comfort zone, that's what I think of. I think of I'm stuck in a place where I'm not moving forward to my goals because I feel so comfortable where I'm at in this moment, right? And so I think this is where the comfort zone and the growth zone, this is where they merge. This is where, they expand, because I almost feel like our comfort zone should be expanding. Do you know what I mean? Like our comfort zone should be growing in this sense of like, I'm going after my goals. So right now, maybe, I'll use an example of my own of like, this, every young person has a coach, right? Like that's part of my comfort zone, yes. However, there's pieces that I think that are still outside of that just because and maybe this isn't comfort zone though. Maybe this isn't the best example. I need a better example here. But you get what I'm trying to say? That like, there's like, there's certain things that we do, and I guess I'm thinking it from a very business perspective, because most of the business programs that I'm in, they talk about this comfort zone. And so it's like, I'm too scared. Okay, maybe this is a better example. Hold on. So I'm too scared to show up live, right? I'm too scared to go live in my group or on my Instagram or whatever, right? And those things feel scary. So I stay in my comfort zone because it feels too vulnerable. It feels too scary to put myself out there. And so I think this, like, when we step out of the comfort zone, that we're becoming a different version of ourselves. Like if I'm getting out of my comfort zone and now I am, the person, I go live every day on my Instagram or whatever, for this example. Now that's a different version of me. I have to break through maybe some limiting beliefs. And I think this is that merge, right? The comfort zone and the growth zone. But I feel like there's so much more. There's so much more to this. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation because, like, yeah, my wheels are turning and I'm like, like, I smell smoke.
Yeah, me too. I love what the both of you shared about comfort zone. Like I'm the same way right now, Amanda. I'm like, ooh, this is also juicy, and I want to like let it land and like explore more. So what I'm hearing so far, I love the growth zone too, and I've heard this also in so many courses already. I definitely agree. This is more from the comfort zone to the growth zone is more this like expansion and becoming a newer version of ourselves. I'm totally signed up for that. And I love what you brought in, Tyler, about safety zone. Like this is a different thing that when we are, when when the way we've set up our lives, my wheels are so turning right now. Like, how do I even?
It's more like a trauma response. It's not necessarily right. It's like I'm actually keeping myself safe, and I feel like we've also talked about this as like, you know, like a turtle, right? Like that turtle, like I'm going into my little shell to keep myself, like actually like feeling like we're keeping our sense of safety, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that, I don't know, there's more to that though, because I think that when we are in this trauma response, or when we have set, it doesn't even need to be about trauma, when we have set up our lives in a way that it's not serving us, right? So we have all these little habits that make us feel uncomfortable, like we think we need them, we think we're like depending on them, but they're actually not serving us for our highest good. Then I would say that this is also like safety zone. And part of it we're probably aware, and then a lot that is unconscious, like we don't even know kind of what we are doing. So it takes self-inquiry to understand, okay, am I like really in a comfort zone for me right now, or like the comfort zone that the two of you were describing, or is it more the kind of safety zone? So I would say that when someone really is more in the safety zone, just like purely trying to survive and holding on to things, then the first thing needs to be to ask ourselves, like, okay, how can we get out of our turtle shell, right? Like how can we make it safe again? Like just purely being alive, how can that be a safe experience again? And then that eventually, I don't know, let me know what you think, that eventually can become the comfort zone, to like just have like a steady temperature. And I do agree that when we are in this space, then the growth zone is inevitable. Like I think people, when they are in their comfort zone, really the comfort zone we are talking about right now, too long, like people are not meant to stay in the same place, like not meant to stay in the same state of life for a long time. So we are eventually meant to grow. And maybe, not to make it more confusing, but wanting to throw this in also, that when we're staying in our comfort zone for an extended period of time, it can become in kind of like anxiety zone. We can feel uncomfortable in that because we're not expanding. And I think we're like meant to expand. We're meant to like grow. And so I don't know if is there now a fourth zone? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be like the safety zone that we go back to when we've kind of outgrown our comfort zone. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's, I don't know. I think we are like really onto something here.
I like this question around like the different zones, because you typically only hear comfort zone and growth zone. You know, those are like the two common ones that, at least in the personal development world, that's what they're always talking about. I love this idea that there's the safety zone that you kind of go into when you have a trauma response, or, you know, you're literally just trying to keep yourself safe and secure and everything like that. I would also say there, you know, if we're looking at this and we're having this bigger conversation about all the zones that we might find ourselves in, eventually, if you don't grow, if you don't evolve, you're going to end up in like the stuck zone. I don't know if that's like the right word to call that, but it's like I think, you know, when you see the traditional conversation around the comfort zone, you know, like to me, I would almost reframe that as, this is like the stuck or the stale zone, where it just feels like there's no evolution happening, there's no growth, there's nothing. It's just that like, I'm stuck. I'm in this stuck zone. And I think a lot of people find themselves in the stuck zone. It's like they're yearning for more. They're yearning for the growth. They're wanting to do something bigger, but they just don't even know how to get started. And so immediately, like it's always like, jump into the growth zone. And that feels so overwhelming for a lot of people, I feel like. And, you know, it's this idea of like the little actions that you take every single day that help you expand into that growth zone, so that eventually, coming back to what we were talking about, where the comfort zone and the growth zone are almost equal. The comfort zone is the growth zone where you are comfortable growing and evolving, and you're out of that stuck zone. So I don't know if that adds anything to this conversation, but like that's what I was thinking about. It's like we almost need 4 different zones to classify where you're at right now. And you know, and then that comfort zone is really, I would almost like say this as, in order to get to the growth zone, we have to get rid of the language of comfort zone and call it the uncomfortable zone, because that initial transition, like going back to Amanda's example of going live, the first time you do it, it's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. And then through repetition and through commitment and dedication, it eventually becomes comfortable, and that becomes your new comfort zone.
Oh my gosh, my brain hurts.
Mine does too.
I have to go back and listen to this episode. I'm like, how many times have we said zone?
That's going to be the drinking game of the episode. Although I don't promote the drinking like that, but because that would be a lot, because we've said it a lot. So don't do that.
But it's true. And what another, one of those terms that are so used that's coming up for me is imposter syndrome. And I also, because I wonder if part of this, turning that comfort zone into a growth zone, the missing link, that missing piece, or that limiting belief, maybe, is this like idea of imposter syndrome. Like, oh, I'm not the person, like, to continue with this like live example, right? I'm not the person who goes live every day on my social media. Like, I'm not that person. And maybe there's other limiting beliefs and other reasons and other things that come into play. But I just can see how that belief in particular can really hinder that process, can really hinder the step from, or the merging of the comfort and the growth zone, is that imposter syndrome. And I don't know if this is like, I'm trying to think if this would be something that would be like a universal truth, or, because I could definitely see this in the business world, right? Like business application, 100% I see it. But I wonder if in, like, does this apply when it comes to a person, like your personal life, right? Because there's also a comfort zone there too. Like having difficult conversations, like those kinds of things, right? So yeah, I don't know if that would be the same thing, but it maybe would be in different words, but that same kind of idea that, oh, that's not me. Like, I'm not that person. Or maybe that's too scary. Because I'm also thinking of a story that around specifically imposter syndrome that I heard and really impacted me, was that, and also actually comfort zone. And the idea was that, essentially, if you don't feel like an imposter, or if you don't feel like you're kind of getting out of your comfort zone, then it actually is a negative. Like it's a positive to feel like an imposter. Like I feel like there's this negativity around like imposter syndrome, right? It's like, oh, I'm a fake, or you're a fraud, or all those things. But how, and I can't remember who it was where I heard this, but basically how they reframed this was that the imposter syndrome is actually a positive because it's a sign of growth. Like if I'm in a room with a bunch of, billionaires, some imposter syndrome might come up there, but that means I'm growing. It means that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be to grow because I'm surrounded by situations or in a situation that's beyond my comfort zone, if you will. And maybe this is confusing the conversation where we're saying like the merging of the comfort and the growth zone, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah, go Tyler, tell us.
Okay. This is so crazy that we're talking about this because I just had this conversation this morning. When I was on the other podcast, we were having a very similar conversation around the imposter syndrome and how, oftentimes I think what stops us from entering that growth zone or merging like the comfort in the growth zone, which is the bigger conversation we're trying to have here, is oftentimes we let imposter syndrome lead, and that's like the blockade that stops us from growing because we let the imposter syndrome tell us, oh, we can't do that. I'm not the one who goes live on social media all the time. I'm not the one that goes out and closes the big deals. I'm not the one, like whatever the I'm not story you're telling yourself, that is the imposter syndrome trying to keep you from breaking into that growth zone to make that become part of your comfort zone. And we were talking about this, and I think I was sharing, I was like the imposter syndrome never leaves us. The imposter syndrome doesn't go away. We never fear, or we never feel fearless. There's always some sort of insecurity, imposter syndrome, doubt that we have. That's a good thing. We can use that to continue growing. We can use that as a reminder of, hey, I'm doing the uncomfortable shit. And I think this is that conversation where, you have to learn how to not let the imposter syndrome lead, but let it walk alongside you. Let it be part of your crew, posse, whatever. I don't even know what they say nowadays, but like, let it be part of your entourage. Let imposter syndrome walk alongside you, but recognize that you have the power to make those choices, to say, I am the person that gets on social media and does the lives every day, or I am the one that gets in there and closes the big deals, or I am the one that goes out and sells until I've made $1 million, or whatever it is that you want to do. Like, you have to recognize that you have the power to lead and not let imposter syndrome keep you from entering the growth zone to expand the comfort zone. Because every time we tap into the growth zone, our comfort zone expands, and it's this really harmonious, like, symbiotic relationship between the comfort zone and the growth zone. And this is why I don't think the comfort zone is a bad place. I don't think there are times when you're not going to do a lot of growth, and it's okay to just kind of sit more so in that comfort zone, because if you're doing this correctly, over time your comfort zone is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're getting more and more comfortable with the growth, where eventually the growth zone doesn't even exist because you're just so comfortable growing that now becomes the full-on comfort zone.
I really love all of this, and I can see how this whole like imposter thought came into your mind, Amanda, because I was just thinking, okay, when I see myself in my comfort zone with anything, and then I do have the ambition to grow into something else, right? Into the billionaire, for example. Like, I'm a millionaire now, and then I want to grow into the billionaire. Then this is this like identity shift that needs to happen. And until I am the billionaire, I will feel like the imposter somehow, and so I can totally see how this is linked to this whole conversation we had before of like, oh yeah, in the comfort zone, course, I am that already. I am a millionaire. Like, I can look at my bank account and I can see or on my assets, and yeah, I'm a millionaire, right? And then I go into a room of billionaires. I'm like, what am I doing here? I have no, like, why am I here? Like, everyone's a billionaire and I am not. And of course it comes up. Of course this feeling comes up, like, nope, I don't belong. And then we need to stretch ourselves and like both of you were sharing, do these little things that bring us a little closer and stretch us a little tiny bit every day until we feel like, not just feel like, but we are then the billionaire, and we're like, oh yeah, I'm in this room now, and that's my new normal. That's my new comfort zone.
So maybe because now what I'm thinking, now that we've made this like comfort zone, growth zone, merging, beauty, like it's just a beautiful picture, right? Of like growth and expansion. And so then how can we differentiate almost between comfort zone in the sense of like the comfort zone is expanding and it maybe just hasn't caught up to the growth zone just yet, right? And this uncomfortable zone. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you want to like find a new term for that?
Yeah, how do we even like we're talking about so many zones here. Like, how do we make sense of it all?
Can you give an example so we can like, I feel like when we have like a visual, we're so much better in drawing the concept around it. I think what you mentioned earlier with like going live is can be a good example.
Yeah, and maybe this is like, you know, like the getting stuck. Like there's one thing in wanting to be the person, be the version of you that does go live every day, right? Mm-hmm. But you're just not there yet. Mm-hmm. And then just continuing to like think about it, plan. Maybe it's, you know what, I haven't reached that the comfort zone hasn't like fully enveloped the growth zone in the sense that I haven't gone live yet, but here I am, like I'm writing scripts or I'm doing those things, which also can sometimes like, that's an interesting one. But like, okay, and then maybe I'm sitting here and I'm writing scripts every day. I'm like coming up with new ideas on guests that I want to bring on. And so I'm coming up with all the ideas, but then I don't actually ever hit live.
I love this. This is like me a couple of years ago. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, I think we've all been there because this is I think it comes back down to awareness of, you know, checking in with yourself to ask yourself, okay, am I like, I believe that you can't blend comfort zone and growth zone without having that middle area of uncomfortable. You know, I think the three of them have to coexist. I think it's like the holy trinity of growth. You know, you've got the comfort zone, you've got the growth zone, and then you've got your uncomfortable zone. Okay. And then make like this holy trinity of personal development. I don't know. I'm making this up right now, y'all. This could be big. But there's always going to be things that we are uncomfortable doing. And if you ever find yourself in a true place of like, oh, I'm comfortable with all of this, you've broken that trinity, you've broken that triangle. You know, you have to kind of check in and say, okay, where am I uncomfortable? We have to, you know, I hate that phrase, like get comfortable being uncomfortable, but it's a true phrase. It's like we have to embrace being uncomfortable. We have to recognize like that's okay. Like being uncomfortable doesn't mean you're not safe. And I think oftentimes, coming back to like our basic needs of love, safety, and belonging, what makes being uncomfortable so uncomfortable is that it feels like it threatens our safety. It feels like it threatens our belonging, feels like it's going to threaten our love. But when you start to tap into the uncomfortable space, you start to go, oh, I'm actually okay here. And this doesn't mean like you have to dive into the deep end and like, do this. This starts with like little actions. This starts with like me at the gym right now doing 10-pound dumbbells, like for my shoulder presses, because I have absolutely no shoulder strength right now. Or maybe I never did, And do you know how every single day when I'm in the gym and I'm doing the 10-pound dumbbells, how embarrassed and how like uncomfortable I feel because like the guy next to me is doing 40 pounds, But this comes back to another important topic here about comparison, about we don't need to be comparing, our comfort zones, our growth zones, our uncomfortable zones. We don't need to be making comparisons to the person to our left or the person to our right. This is an individual journey, and you get to decide how uncomfortable you want to be and or not. And like, I think just overall we need to stop trying to force people. We need to stop trying to like push people out of the comfort zone, and they need to kind of develop, they need to go on that personal journey to figure out what does their, triangle look like, how do they define their comfort zone, their uncomfortable zone, and that growth zone, and how do they keep all three going at the same time so that they do find that forward momentum.
So I can just repeat myself. I'm loving all of this. And adding two things. For me, I have this new visual now. It's like this 3D model where we have, when our basic needs are met, this is when the comfort zone can actually exist. Before that, it's just this, whatever we call it, the safety zone, the survival zone, whatever. And so the next level of that, when we are able to work on this, heal, move on, whatever we need to do, then we can then we have our comfort zone and we can work on that. And in that comfort zone is the like kind of like belt, like this belt around the comfort zone that is the uncomfortable actions that will get us into the growth zone. It's kind of like the border between, or it's like an overlay between those two. So that I see for myself right now. And what you mentioned, Tyler, I think is so crucial to see, okay, when I'm uncomfortable, that doesn't mean that I'm in the safety zone and everything's like falling apart in 3 seconds, but it seems like that, right? Our brain is going to tell us going live is the worst thing. You're for sure going to die. Don't you dare do it. That's what it is in the beginning. And this is where I want to bring in the other thing I want to mention is certainty and safety. That we make whatever action is really uncomfortable for us, like going live, for example, or going to the gym and feeling like we're like the weakest person there. Make this an experience that is as safe as possible and have like a crazy amount of accountability and make it certain. So, for example, using the example with the gym from you, Tyler, to say that, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do the smallest weight on every machine, right, possible. And I have my personal trainer there. So I'm not by myself, right? So these are all things that will give you safety in doing these exercises, right? And someone who imagines, okay, I'm going to be the next weightlifter of the universe, I don't know, and going to the gym and having all these unrealistic expectations, is going to have a very different experience. It's uncertain and there's no safety, right? Because they think they already need to lift like 180 on the press or whatever. So those are, I think, really two important things to when we do the uncomfortable things, that we are making sure that it's as certain as possible, the outcome is as certain as possible, and it's the small steps, and that we have this piece of safety, and that we just, shut up our like fear voice a little bit and say, yeah, we're stretching ourselves, but we only need to stretch ourselves like a tiny bit, and then we can stack the stretching.
As long as we don't get stuck in the spinning wheel of, because I'm thinking of like that, like the procrastination now of like, finding all of the excuses and all of the reasons why the comfort zone just makes more sense, right? I'm also thinking, going back to the example of the live, right? It's like, oh, well, or even the gym, right? Like I'm writing the scripts, I'm doing all the things that I need to do to prepare, so that I'm doing all this small little behind the scenes things, but we use those as excuses and reasons why we're not doing the thing. Or it's like, oh, well, I walked today, so I don't need to go to the gym. Like, and not that, you have to go to the gym. I'm just saying, like, in this example of going to the gym, right? Like, what are the excuses that we can tell ourselves? Or it's like oh, well, and there's almost like this balance, because, and I'm seeing this especially with the gym, right? Of like, we want to honor our body, because sometimes, going to the gym every day also isn't healthy either. So it's like finding that balance between, well, I'm honoring my body. Like today, my body feels tired. So it's every day then does your body feel tired, right? Like we can find so many excuses and reasons why. And I think this is like what also you were saying, Stephanie, and like, in some ways, this is kind of that fear voice, right? That we need to like get out of the driver's seat and not allow to, the doubts or the imposters, like so many of the things that we've already mentioned. But I think it's important to, yes, give ourselves grace and give ourselves time to get out of the discomfort zone that sits between the comfort zone and the growth zone, but also not allow it to, like you dip your toe into like the uncomfortable zone and it's like, oh no, never mind. And like, we're just like running back, back to this like place that feels comfortable. Because I do believe, and I know we talked about this already though, that growth is so important and is a big reason why we're here. And I guess I like want to be that inspiring voice to say, like, you got this. Like,
Yeah.
This opportunity or this idea or this thought, like this, like the growth thoughts, right? The goals, the whatever, they wouldn't be thoughts for you if they weren't meant for you. Like true, like, like coming from the heart, not just like those like brain thoughts that, come, but like from your heart. Like if it's coming from your heart, if it's coming from your, bigger purpose or a bigger mission, all of those things that we love to talk about here, if it's coming from that, then, take that one little step, take the, and do the thing.
I want to add something to this very multi-layered conversation that we are having today, which, what else is new with this space? But coming to this kind of final thoughts here around perfectionism. I'm always reminding myself to get it produced, and then we will polish. So often we're trying to polish, we're trying to perfect. It's like, oh, I can't get, I can't go live until the script is perfect, or I can't go to the gym until I've already lost the weight first, or whatever, or like gain the muscle. It doesn't work that way. Really doesn't. But it is this conversation around, it's this gentle reminder that every single person is a work in progress. Every single person is always, if you're doing it right, you're never complete, you're never finished, it's never polished. And so we might as well just go out and produce and get the stuff done and do it. And then as we start to do it, we can refine, we can polish, we can get better at it. We're never going to reach that place of, I feel ready, I feel like I am capable of doing this. There comes a point in your journey, in whatever journey you're on, and this is for anything that you want to do, where you have to take that leap of faith. You have to say, okay, I'm just gonna allow myself to be in this uncomfortable zone. I don't know what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. And when you do that, it does open that gate for growth. And it's really like this amazing energy of like you're letting the growth come in, and in return you're getting more comfortable. And it's a really beautiful place to be in, but you're never going to get there if you stay in that comfort zone, if you keep yourself from thinking that everything has to be perfect first before you go out and try. You know, failure is such a massive part to this equation of, how do I keep the growth zone, the uncomfortable zone, and the comfort zone open? It's through a lot of failure. It's through a lot of learning and stumbling and being imperfect when everybody is trying to be perfect. And this, like, it's such a beautiful thing when you really break it down and you really think about that. Everybody is a work in progress. And that's beautiful.
I really like this like finishing thought here of that. It's not like there's no destination to get to. Whatever visualization of the comfort and growth zone we came up with today, whatever one you want to keep for yourself. There's like all marbles in my head right now. I'm like, which one? That it's not about like getting to this place of, oh yeah, I think that once we are transitioning to the growth zone in any area, right? Let's go back to the example with going live. That once we are somehow comfortable with that and we are continuing to go live on a regular basis, it will become part of our comfort zone. We just do it. We don't think about it. We have like, minimal effort to write a script or whatever. It's gonna, like, the day's gonna come. If this is one of your goals, the day is gonna come. And then it's part of your comfort zone. And then the growth zone will be something else. And I think it's really important. And I love that you brought this to the table, Tyler, that it's not like there's no destination. It will all forever like blossom like a lotus flower, that you are reaching this newer level of comfortable. And then there's something new that will be in the growth zone. And I'm just always so grateful for this space here, because here we can geek out on self-development and personal growth. And that's just life. Like, that's how it's supposed to be. You're never supposed to arrive somewhere, and finding the beauty in being in this process and taking the imperfect action and just giving yourself a ton of grace. And like, good job, whatever small action you took is like, that's where all the gold lies, and like enjoying the process and that it's perfectly fine to have a growth zone wanting to grow into. It's not meant to be like finished at some point.
Oh, so good. So good. Another great episode, if I do say so myself. And, you know, I love that we're closing with this reminder that it truly is the progress over perfection, because there really isn't that, you know, final like growth stage. We are always growing. We're all evolving, and in different places and spaces and ways on our own journeys, not for anybody else, but for ourselves. And being on that journey for yourself, yes, as we talked about, it can be uncomfortable sometimes, but that on the other side of this discomfort is growth, is expansion, and that's just so exciting.
Yeah. I'm gonna throw this just gonna drop this in as we're closing out. I do believe that you can also be, because you're these zones are like multifaceted, meaning like they're different areas of your life. Like you might, like for your career right now, you might be in that triangle zone where you've got growth and uncomfortability and comfort zones, and you're making some changes in your career right now, and that gate's open. And then in your relationship, you might be in a safety zone right now, or a survival zone. Like that's another thing too, is like you hear the comfort zone, and it's often singular. It's like, well, there's one comfort zone. No, there are multiple zones. And I believe that as complex humans, we can be in multiple zones at one time. Like I might have just gotten out of a really bad relationship, and now, I'm in that safety zone when it comes to relationships and dating, but my career could be thriving and I'm over here in the growth zone. Like there's a lot of like layers to the zones. Like it's not just one. You don't just have one, I think, is what I want to end with, just as a gentle reminder.
I'm glad you threw that in there, because it came up for me, and I'm like, oh gosh, am I opening up a can of worms? But I think it is important. So I'm glad that it showed up in this episode, because I think it is important to remember that, right? It's, again, this is where we fall into this like comparison, or these like generalizations that we make about things, and without getting into too many other cans of worms here, I'm gonna leave it at that thought. But oh, this was so good. I'm so glad we had this conversation today, and I hope that this inspires other people to just see a new perspective on comfort zones, or to look at comfort zones in a different way, even if maybe you are in a stage of like being in between this like comfortable and growth, and in that discomfort space, that it's okay. It's okay. Like all of the zones are welcome. Yeah.
What a beautiful last sentence. So we want to thank everyone for being here, participating, watching, listening. And we will see you next week for another great episode. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. You can follow the show on Instagram at Kaya the Podcast, and on YouTube and Facebook by searching Kaya the Podcast. If you haven't already done so, please help us keep the conversations going by subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. And be sure to join us next time for another deep conversation.